we kicked off a Pure series last week. We were reminding ourselves of our goals as Christians, that it's not just simply an aim to live a good life, but it's about living a pure life. God calls us to be holy as He is holy. And I think we'd all agree that it's a bit of a tough call, isn't it? I'm 40 years into this now, maybe a bit more, and I still have my issues, and I mess up, and I start again, and I get on my knees, and I take communion, and I keep short accounts, and it doesn't always go to plan, and I'm not always as perhaps pure in every sense of the word that I would love to be. But we're looking at our sexual purity. And so last week we talked about the fact that sex and sexual attraction is actually God's idea. And it's not the media's, that sex isn't God, sex isn't God, God is God. He created it. Sex isn't something bad or gross, do you remember? That we should save for the one we love, which doesn't make sense either in that respect, but we know what we're talking about. It's a precious gift that we should enjoy in the right context of a heterosexual marriage. But sadly, we need to acknowledge that this gift from God is often misused and abused, and we often fall into sexual sin. Now, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to continue this series. We're going to address another couple of issues, develop some Christian mind control. But this week, I'm going to say some things about our eyes. Do you remember, be careful, little ears, what you hear. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. And we're going to look at some of the causes that perhaps cause us to commit sexual sin. And some of you are thinking, oh, this is a bit inappropriate for a Sunday morning, this, isn't it? Fancy doing this? And I've never heard this. Somebody said, I've never heard a preach on that for 79 years. And so I understand that this is a bit of a tricky one. Some of you are squirming, and I'm amazed you've all come back, to be honest. Maybe we should do this again next year. What do you think? Every year there's sex talks. But we understand that. My dad's here. My mum's sat next to me. I've got to sit next to my kids and listen to this. And I know it's a little bit awkward, but let me explain to you why we're doing this. You see, having pastored and been on church leadership teams for nearly 30 years, we noticed in pastoring and mentoring context that once we go past the pleasantries of talking about the weather and work and family or football, people start to talk about the real issues that they're dealing with. It's a bit like deja vu, to be honest, because some start talking about their struggles with looking at pornographic images, private messages. They start talking about chat rooms, the battles of our phones, being bombarded with sexting and reels and just happening on these things, sometimes very innocently. Gaming temptations, spam emails that want you to press on the link to who knows where and who knows what. And on most occasions, these are godly men and women, just like you and me maybe. And from ages to teen, to our twilight years, people who are passionate about their faith struggle in these areas of their lives. And so on various leadership teams over recent years, we've discussed these issues, and we're always faced with three options. Number one, ignore it. Ignore it. Ignore the problem, don't talk about it, don't mention it in church at all, and pretend it doesn't exist in the church. Secondly, we could arrange a meeting for everyone who struggles with pornography in the minor hall on Thursday. Anybody? Please sign up at the back. You ain't going to come, are you? So while you're here, I'm going to get you. No. While you're here, let's talk about it as a family. From all our ages, our young people are in. And it's not just a young person's issue. Guys, this is something we battle with, and your parents and your grandparents, everybody has had to work this stuff through. And so we get to choose to preach the whole Bible. And as a leadership, without ducking or diving the difficult stuff, we choose to talk to the whole church about the issues of sex and sexuality, because in reality it affects us all. And so here we are. 30 more minutes of a bit of awkward, all right? Now when I I say that struggles with sexual sin affect us all, there can be a temptation to sit in our pew, as it were, and think, that's not me. It's not me. She's not talking to me. I hope so-and-so's hearing this. I don't have a problem with that at all. And we can be thinking that. When Jesus conducted his ministry, there were many people who felt that way. They hadn't committed any sexual sin physically. They hadn't committed adultery. They hadn't slept around. They hadn't sent that sex text or passed it on. And so they thought they were pure. But in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, Jesus speaks to these people and he says that sexual sin isn't just something you commit with another person. It can be something that happens in your heart and your mind and your eyes. Jesus says you can commit sexual sin with someone in a hotel room, or you can commit sexual sin by yourself in your living room, a classroom, a gym, at your computer, or even in church today. Because of what you're looking at. And where your mind then takes you. And so for the sake of my talk this morning, I'm going to say something about how we deal with sexual temptation, and more specifically with regard to our eyes and the things that we look at. Now, I don't need to tell you that pornography is a massive issue in our world today. With increase in availability of the internet, you no longer have to take that risk of walking into your local newsagent and getting that magazine off the top shelf. Pornography is in our homes, isn't it? It's in our hands, on our phones. It's on our computers. It's wherever we are, on our smartphones and tablets. It's in our living rooms 24/7. And today, approximately 60% of all websites are of a sexual nature. 60%, and that's just the normal web. In 2006, the porn industry had a global revenue of $97 billion. If you compare that to the same year of Microsoft, who only gathered in $44.8 billion. Wow. You'll understand what a massive issue this is, folks. Sexting. 40% of 11 to 14-year-olds have used their mobile phones or computers to send pornographic images of themselves or receive naked or topless images of friends. Now, folks, that's not just a poor judgment call. That's not just abusive, that's illegal. Any picture of an under 18-year-old sent, you are committing a wrong in the eyes of our law. Be careful. Don't do it. I've sat in courts with people from church who've messed up on this. So I know what I'm talking about. Age, or it's just, no, it's legal. 18. Be careful. 1 in 5 internet searches from mobile phones are for porn. With unpredicted levels of sex trafficking, child pornography, the viewing of illegal images of children has gone through the roof. And I've had people whose homes have been police have arrived at the door and taken every gadget they have. Every single one. And they've not had them back for months because the police have gone through every little thing because somebody in their family has accessed child pornography. We don't have to worry about this though, do we? Because we're Christians. Folks, this is important stuff. There are a multitude of surveys being done on this issue. But generally speaking, it is agreed that between 15 to 20% of Christian women and 50 to 70% of Christian men struggle with some level of addiction to sexual imagery. Porn. There is some comfort though. Here we go. Let me give you some hope. All right. I am told that regular church offenders are 26% less likely to look at porn. Well done. Brilliant. 26% less likely. I believe that figure needs to rise, don't you? I believe it does. But you see, that it's vital. You can see, can't you, that it's vital that we have a conversation about this in our church. And how we begin perhaps to tackle the issue personally and as a church family. We're going to read, and wherever he's gone, come on, James, let us read to you the whole of Proverbs 5, because then it just puts this into context. It's the account of a father who is speaking to his son about avoiding this issue, this kind of stuff. It's quite likely, actually, that it's King Solomon, and he's advising his son about the right way to live and how to steer clear of certain temptations. Go for it, James. Thank you. I've read it. I know what's coming.
After what you've said, I feel particularly bad looking at this on my phone. Warning against adultery. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths wander aimlessly, but she does not know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you lose your honour to others, and your dignity to one who is cruel. Lest strangers feast on your wealth, and your toil enrich the house of another. At the end of your life you will groan when your flesh and body is spent. You will say, how I hated discipline, how my heart spurned correction. I would not obey my teachers or turn my ear to my instructors, and I was soon in serious trouble in the assembly of God's people. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares, let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breasts satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline, they will die, led astray by their own great folly.
The first thing that jumps out to me is the way that Solomon tells his sons that when temptation comes his way, it will be attractive. He says, for the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. When temptation comes, it will be sweet like honey. It will almost whisper words to you that create excitement and anticipation. Temptation wouldn't be temptation, would it, unless it offered something to us better than we already have. So when someone becomes addicted to pornography, for example, they don't do it because they think it's going to harm them. They do it because it promises something good. It promises excitement. It promises secrecy. It promises fun. It offers an escape from the reality of our lives and a fantasy of a more exciting world. It promises a release from sexual frustration. It offers to stimulate a more exhilarating sex life. Pornography drips honey and has a speech that is smoother than oil. Do we have any fishermen? This is a bit of a nice move, isn't it? Do we have any fishermen in church today? Anybody like fishing? It's not a trick question. We're not going to take a photograph and put it on this was the porn service and the response and the appeal. Nothing like that. No fishermen in church. Wow. Okay, well, fishing. I'm not very good at fishing. My Uncle Ron taught me to fish as a kid, and I don't understand fishing, and clearly you don't too. We're of a like-minded that people sit in the wet and they're soaked all weekend by a lake looking for that one that one big bite. And Michael Ron taught me to fish as a kid, but the trouble is I couldn't touch the maggots, and then I couldn't touch the fish. So I wasn't the best sport for me at all, if you can call sitting on the side of a lake a sport. So what on earth goes through the mind of a fish before he bites the maggot? He swims around the bait, maybe he stares at the maggot thinking, oh, he sniffs it. He takes this little nibble, he thinks, oh, why not? You think, oh, this is going to be good, and he takes the bait, tasty. He's having a bit of fun with this little maggot, tasty little maggot, and he ends up being hooked. And the next thing he knows, he's filleted, he's fried, and he's served up in a chippy up Prospect Road. I mean, has anybody been there though with sin? Anybody? Not Prospect Road, that's sin for me, to be honest. That chip shop up there is great, and I mustn't go there anymore. But you know, it's sin, it promises so much, doesn't it? But once you get cooked, you realise quite quickly that it delivers very little. Shame, guilt, and a need for more. And that's what Solomon says, the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she's as bitter as gall, like vinegar, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps lead straight to the grave. That don't sound quite as it sounded initially. What promised to be exciting and fun turns out to be destructive and harmful. Something that promises life leads to death. What looks sweet turned out to be sour, and maybe you found temptation to be a little bit like that. So many men and women get hooked on porn because it promises something positive. But once they've taken the bait, they discover how difficult it is to get rid and how destructive it is. The Sunday Times ran an article that had the headline, "How Teenage Access to Pornography is Killing Intimacy in Sex." And they go on to write how pornography results in self-centered people who only see other people as objects for their own pleasure. We see this, right? You wonder why family life is the way it is? How pornography leads people down this unsatisfied path with their real-life partners. It promotes sexual violence towards women and men. It produces short-term thrills, but long-term problems. And these are the insights of someone who isn't a Christian. Wise words. In Paul's letters to the Ephesians and in 2 Corinthians, he warns us to be aware of the devil's schemes. He suggests that our enemy has a deliberate way of working, and that includes making something ugly and destructive appear beautiful and life-giving. And only when we are hooked do we fully understand what Jesus' description of the devil as one who steals and kills and destroys really means for us. Solomon says to his son, this is how sexual temptation works. You're going to be tricked into believing that something is harmless. And once you're cooked probably as well, you'll discover how damaging it is. Now you'll be pleased to know that Solomon doesn't just leave it there. He doesn't give his son just a warning, he gives him a plan. He gives him a strategy. He says, now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. In other words, if you don't want to get fat, don't go the chippy up Prospect Road. What's the matter with you? Go a different route. Stop walking that way when it's open. As if, stop walking that way when it's open and praying, please God help me. Stop walking that way. Solomon says to his sons, he says, you've got a choice here. You can look back at the end of your life with regrets, and the way that you despised discipline that was actually really good for you, and the way that you wasted the best years of your life running after destructive things. And you can look back with regret over the way you ignored wise teaching, or you can get yourself a plan. You can get yourself a strategy, and the strategy is this: keep away. You were thinking that you needed something more spiritual today? The Word of God says, keep away. Don't go near. Take the long way round. Stay at a safe distance. Don't see how close you can get without sinning and then pray and ask God's forgiveness. Stay away. Some of you have heard the story of two single adults who are on a mission trip together. And they got caught in a snowstorm. Oh dear. And in the Alps. Lovely, eh? And it was a rough night. And they didn't know what to do, and they knew that they'd freeze if they stayed in the car. So they went looking for a shelter, and they found this little abandoned cabin with a stack of blankets on a shelf, a sleeping bag and a little bed. And the guy said, well, look, you take the bed. What a lad, lovely fella. You know, will you take the bed and I'll take the floor. So she got onto the bed, she wrapped herself up in a blanket, and he took his sleeping bag to the other side of the room, lay down on the floor, zipped himself in. 5 minutes later, she said, I'm really cold. And he got out of his sleeping bag, got her another blanket, tucked her in, got into his own sleeping bag, the other side of the room, and zipped it up. About 5 minutes later, she goes, I'm still freezing. And he got her, took another blanket off the shelf, tucked her in, returned to his sleeping bag, across the room. You guessed it, 5 minutes later, she says, I'm still really cold. And he lay there for a minute, his heart beating fast. And he said, you know what? We're all out here all by ourselves, and no one will ever know. What would you say if we just pretend for one night that we're husband and wife? And she said, I'd really like that. And he said, well, get up and get your own blanket. You see, in moments of temptation, you're going to need a plan. It's too late to find a plan then, isn't it? You know? You need to have decided ahead of time that you're going to handle the pressure in this way. And still we may fail, let's face it, but we need a plan. Jesus has got something to say about this in Matthew 5. He says, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. Now obviously Jesus wasn't advocating that we pluck our eyes out this afternoon. He was using an exaggeration to tell us what we need to do to take strong and even drastic action to address the lust of our eyes. We need a strategy. We need a plan. We need to win the battle for our eyes. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, can you? Now, can I suggest 4 things to you that will help you with your battle plan? Number 1, it's a book called Starve the Sumo, right? It's a guy called Steve Atterburn wrote a book called Every Young Man's Battle. And he describes a young man who came to him who was really struggling with lust and porn and sexual fantasy and all of that. And he says to God, God, this isn't fair. I can't continue to wrestle with this every day. You gave me these desires, but I'm feeling like I'm wrestling a giant sumo every day. It's just too big. And God says, no. The reality that you are facing is a 5'2" weakling who's no match for you. He says the trouble is now he's now a sumo in your mind, massive sumo kind of wrestler kind of thing, because you keep feeding him so much. If you want to win the battle, you've got to starve the sumo in you. The first part of your battle plan, folks, is to minimize the opportunities you have to see sexual provocative things. So that you stop feeding that impure desire and eventually you starve your eyes. Now that may mean you have to stop watching certain movies or scrolling quite so much on your phone. It may mean that you only access the internet in public places, leave your tech in the lounge or the kitchen, don't take it upstairs at night. It may mean that you have to cancel certain subscriptions or block certain channels. It may mean that you need to get a filter on your computer. It may mean that you go to the gym at a different time. You see, each one of us know when and where our greatest temptations occur. And if we're serious about leading a pure life, we need to plan how we starve ourselves of that sumo. You know what you've got to do. Secondly, we need to bounce our eyes. You ever bounced your eyes? It's not really in that respect. But in our world, you will find it impossible to totally eradicate images and appearances that will pop in on a screen or catch your eye across a room. But there is a difference between an accidental look, isn't there, and a glaring stare, a lingering stare. Now, I believe you can retrain your eyes over a period of time to bounce away from the images. I believe you can retrain your eyes with the help of the Spirit and the Word and people around you in fellowship over a period of time to bounce away, to you know when you put your hand in a hot stove, or that's not a way of putting it in the fire on a hot oven, and it bounces away immediately, doesn't it? And some people put it back, don't they? But your initial reaction is shock, and you bounce it away. You can develop that habit of bouncing your eyes away immediately from all that sexy stuff. It will just take time. It will take a new format, a new habit-making mindset. And psychologists will say that if you do this consistently for 6 weeks, you win the battle. You make a new habit with yourself. Thirdly, you need to get a sword. Not literally, obviously. You might not have realised, but I don't have the body of a long-distance runner. I struggle to run for a bus. My running friends tell me that they have running mantras. They repeat certain things when they feel tired, like, I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling good, you know. I'm Paula Radcliffe, I'm Mo Farah, you know, or whatever the new guys are now running. Folks, most of us know what Jesus did when he faced temptation. Luke 4, he says he got out his sword. He quotes the Bible, the sword of the Spirit, the sword of his word. He quotes the Bible back at the devil in Luke 4, and he goes on the attack. Folks, I believe it is useful to have a verse of scripture that you repeat to yourself every time you feel the pressure of temptation. If you don't have a verse to quote, let me suggest one for you. Ladies, you might have to reword it a little, and it's all right, it's not Jesus wept. Because he doesn't weep over your situation. He's got hope for you in even this. The verse, here's a verse, Job 31:1. I made a covenant, a promise with my eyes, not to look lustfully at a girl. So whether you're a boy, girl, whatever you're attracted to, I have made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at anybody. Because I respect them. Because they are God's. They're holy. They're his. I don't want to abuse them or in my mind, never mind in any other way. You see, every time you feel that you are in the heat of battle, you get out a sword and you say, I'm not giving in today because I've made that covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at people. Whether it's George Clooney, whether it's Brad Pitt, Zac Efron, Gary Barlow. I've got a colleague who's mad on Gary Barlow. She's even got a big cardboard cutout of him in the foyer at church. Only for purposes for sermon illustrations, you'll understand. So she tells me. I don't know what it takes, but to do it. You see, the list is endless, folks. We will struggle. Make a covenant. Make a promise to yourself. Your eyes not to linger, but to bounce. And to take that sword, that verse, and repeat it to yourself in those moments. Folks, fourthly, we need to acknowledge the struggle. You know, one of the problems that people have who struggle with porn is that it's so secretive, isn't it? Nobody's going to say, put your hand up today if you struggle with porn. That'd be stupid. That'd just be rude, really. But it's so secretive and it can become a hidden world that no one else knows about you. Just you. And Jesus. And I would suggest that if you are going to win the battle over that, you need to start acknowledging it to yourself, to God, and maybe to one or two trusted friends, really trusted close friends, Can I strongly urge you to find a wise and reliable friend or a church leader? It doesn't have to be me. Please don't let it be me. James is good at this. James in particular. Pick an elder, any elder you know. We're here for you. We're here for you. No one else needs to know. But we're here to walk that through and to support you and to hold you accountable to your journey up and out of this. Pastorally, this is something we've done to help some of the guys in our churches and girls. They've given me permission to ask them the tough questions every week or two. Some of them I've had to have a contract in the church and they've had to allow me to ask them these questions. Have you been looking at porn today? Have you been doing with that this week? There's real power in sharing this secret with someone who can help you through it. So can I also recommend a couple of websites? There's plenty of others as well, run by Christian organisations. One is CARE, one called CovenantEyes.com. The website is a great place to start to look for help, resources, advice that will help you and help others who've mentioned the struggle in this area. So there are apps, as you'll know, that help you, that will stop you even going to certain places on your phone. So, Solomon warns his sons about the real nature of sexual temptation. And he tells them to get a plan that means that they will steer clear of all the places and the people that will cause them to fall. And as the chapter concludes in Proverbs 5, Solomon addresses an issue that I would be wrong to ignore. He speaks about marital unfaithfulness. He speaks about the temptation to find sexual pleasure with someone who's not your husband or who isn't your wife. In verse 15, he speaks about drinking water. It's a lovely way of putting it, isn't it? I can't remember just doing it today. And drinking water from your own cistern and running water from your own well. If that was your parent-child sex talk, I don't think they'd have a clue what you were talking about, would they? But clearly in that day they did. It's biblical language. For don't mess around with someone you're not married to. I'm sounding like my mother, aren't I, here today? And he goes on to speak of marital faithfulness, finding sexual pleasure in the right context of commitment, marriage. Folks, I appreciate that we are a mixture of people here, some single, some married, some bereaved, some divorced. Just for 1 minute, I want to just speak really directly to those who are married here. Everyone else, you can just relax. In fact, you could go and have a... No, don't go. Don't leave just yet. If you're messing around with someone you are not married to, please stop it now. Stop it. If there is some chemistry or a little bit of electricity, you know, this kind of spark, a little flow, whatever it is, some text, some chat online, a colleague, or emails that are coming through, whatever it is between you and someone else, end it today. End it. Don't wait till tomorrow. It's not something you need to phase out gradually. That needs to stop instantly. You need to do whatever it takes to bring it to an end and avoid all contact with that person so that you can lead a God-honouring life. And if it means changing jobs, God will honour you in it. He'll provide you a better one. I can honestly assure you that if that is your only alternative, is to get out of the office and get a different job, He will provide for you. Because you're not just doing the right thing, you're doing the God thing. If it means changing jobs, if it means changing shifts, if it means changing neighbourhoods, changing small groups, changing schools, changing mobile numbers, changing email accounts, or whatever it is, Snapchat, whatever you're on, however complicated it is, do it today. Do it. Solomon says, rejoice in the wife or the husband of your youth. If you've made a covenant to be with someone, unless they are abusive or unfaithful in some way to you persistently, then keep that covenant however you can, whatever it takes. And finally, Solomon delivers the killer blow. He says in verse 21, for a man's ways are in full view of the Lord. A woman's ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all their paths. When the daughter of my old regional boss, perhaps some of you will remember him, Gordon Neal. When Helen started dating, some of you will remember Helen. And he showed them both to the door, and in his usual style and cheeky wink, he said to Helen, he said, now, have a nice time. And he looked at Duncan. You remember Duncan?
Yeah.
He's a pastor here, isn't he? Have a nice time, he said, Duncan, but don't forget, Jesus is watching. As Solomon says, there is nothing secret, nothing hidden, because God sees it all. And ultimately, God says that whatever is hidden in darkness will be revealed in the light. Nothing remains hidden from God, does it? You ask any number of celebrities and politicians about it, they suddenly end up in the news and they're fighting for their lives. Ladies, gents, you can try and cover it, or you can own up. And as we come around communion this morning, you can pretend that your sin doesn't exist and it's not so serious because no one knows. Or you can acknowledge that God sees it and you need his grace. And as you take the bread and wine today, you can ask again for his forgiveness, even in this. Isn't God really good? Even this. My mother might not forgive me, my husband might not forgive me, my family might not forgive me, and yet God is the all-forgiving God. There is no sin too big or too small that he can't deal with for you today. And I pray that even as you take communion this morning, determine in your heart, don't not take communion. Communion is about saying, God, I'll never be worthy, but through your cross I am. Come to the table. Determine in your heart that you will take positive action as you leave this place today. And you can live in verse 13 and ignore teaching. You can ignore today's instruction, or you can live in Jesus' words of John 8, where he says, I do not condemn you. Now go and leave your life of sin. So, you're thinking, what will I do with that? I hope that it will show you that we're a church that will talk about it. That we acknowledge it's real. It's hard. But there are things that we can do to help us from falling. One of our national leaders once said, don't wait for the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Build a fence at the top. And this is all about building a fence at the top, so we don't fall and need an ambulance, or even, a hearse even at the bottom of it. So we're going to take communion, and our young people are going to serve us. But as we do, we would love just to simply play a song, as we just take account of ourselves, consider what the Spirit may be saying to us, and determine in our hearts that we're going to do something about these issues in us today. It may be that you just need to build yourself a plan, so that on the occasion, in that moment, where you are tempted, you've got a plan, you've got a verse, you've got your sword ready for the